Hey everybody, thanks for joining and welcome to conventioNOT. Today we have Hernan Sias of the BusinessBros podcast in San Diego, California. Hernan is a podcaster currently, but this guy's resume is really, really cool. He shared a bunch with us, which started with kind of an impromptu computer business after making a weird real estate decision before the first market crash. And he talked to us about the way that he's used his intelligence, his energy, and his strategies to become one of the leading content creators in the podcast space today. We really appreciate him taking some time out of his busy schedule to join us. Stay tuned to learn more.
Want to introduce Hernan Sias, joining us on conventioNOT today. Hernan is one half of the BusinessBros podcast based out of San Diego, California. I'm going to let Hernan, from what I've chatted with him and kind of researched on him, he's got a pretty diverse bio. So I'm gonna let him introduce himself, probably a little bit more gracefully than I could.
Oh,
thanks for
joining me
joining
on
us.
the spot. No, man. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show for the second time ish. Right? It's funny because on our show we go live every day 4 p.m. ish sharp. Because
like
technology kind of works against you sometimes, so you just got to kind of roll with the punches.
So you do a daily podcast, and we're gonna get into your podcast, and to me, like, just the enormity of doing it on a daily basis. But to be perfectly honest with you, I want to know a little bit more about you, biographically, if that's doable, and then. Yeah, as we're working through this, you could probably educate us on some podcasting prowess and, just get to know one another a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. I'll be 38 this year. Holy crap, time's flown by. All right. Let's see. I started my business career probably when I was about 20 years old. Bought my first house when I was 20. After this financial advisor came to my house one day, my dad was like, I don't know much about very many things. I know that there are people in this world who are smarter than me, and I want to give you guys a fighting head start. And we didn't really have money growing up, so to watch my dad cut a check for $150 back then for somebody to come in and kind of give us some financial advice, I knew it meant something. And what we ended up getting out of it was, we had this plan, James and I, we're going to move out. We're going to get this apartment right by the college, rent rooms together and, live the party life, right? You move out finally. And she kind of sat down and said, well, that's a good idea, but wouldn't it be better if you bought the house and rented out the rooms? Same MO. You're going to do the same thing, except when you guys finally decide to sell it, maybe you sell it at a profit, make your money back that you would have paid in rent, and then, go on with your life. And I was like, wow. You know what I mean? Just like that epiphany, that light bulb goes off in your head. So we did that, you know what I mean? And it was during a time, it was around 2002, 2003-ish, somewhere around there. Like, you had to fog a mirror and they gave you a loan. So it wasn't like It was the most difficult thing to do during that time.
Yeah.
For them to give us a loan, I remember getting the keys and, I was 20 years old. I couldn't even buy my own alcohol yet. And I had this house where I was going to have a lot of parties. Like, I knew that was coming, right? But they gave me the keys and I'm thinking to myself, wow, like, it was really that easy. It was a matter of somebody told you how to do something and I followed the directions just like my mom told me all the time when I was growing up, right? Like, that's how you wash the dishes. You do it like this, step by step. And it happened, right? And so ever since then, it was one of those things where if I wanted to do something, well, all I got to do is look to somebody who's already done it and then follow those steps, right? And, even then, you still make mistakes along the way. You're going to step in it sometimes. I ended up, we started our first computer repair company. Mind you, we started the computer repair company like 6 months after we bought the house because my brother was working for Cox Communications, installing high-speed internet and fixing computers. And he decided that he saw this open patch where there was nothing but mud. And so he took the work truck and he's like doing donuts and then rolled the truck. Right. And so he got fired. We got this mortgage payment to pay. So we create these flyers and we go door to door and we're like, hey, we'll fix your computer, install your high speed internet. And we did that every morning, just handing out flyers. Then my dad was like, don't do flyers, do door hangers. Oh, and don't just do door hangers. Put little stickers on the bottom of the door hanger so people can throw the door hanger away, but they throw the sticker on their computer. They call you when they need you. I was like, that's genius. So we did that for a while. We got James work, and then we were too busy for James. We hired a tech and another tech and opened a store, and, things were great. I dropped out of college because I was like, who needs that thing? College for what? I'm already making enough money. What do I need this for? James gets his heart broken, joins the Navy, and bounces on me. Leaves me with this company I know really nothing about, right? We had ended up buying another property in Las Vegas because we went and did this whole seminar thing on learning how to invest in real estate. And it was cool. We did learn a lot. They take you on this bus at the end of the lessons, right? It's like a 3-day thing. So they teach you everything, like, all the vocabulary that comes in real estate. So the subject to and assignment of contracts, all this stuff. So you have all this, information. Then they take you on this tour bus with a bunch of real estate agents to all their listings. And they're like, who wants to buy this one? And you're like, hell yeah, me.
Wow. Yeah. Like a feeding frenzy, right?
Exactly.
On day 3, you're ready to buy.
Yeah, of course. That makes us the ideal investors, right? So, but I mean, it turned out to be a good thing. We luckily we did learn some stuff. So we turned what could have been a negative investment into a positive investment through that education. But when James joined the Navy, I had to sell that house. I had to sell the house here in San Diego. I closed the business down. I realized, oh shit, there's this guy named Uncle Sam, and he wants money from me every year. Apparently,
he's
didn't know. I didn't file anything.
He's coming.
Yeah, right. I had employees, and you're supposed to file, quarterly and payroll taxes, all that. And I was like, oh, I didn't know. And shutting this business down, I learned. I basically went bankrupt, but that was it. I got bit by that entrepreneurial bug, and I was like, okay. To me, when I explain this to my students, by the way, because I teach high school, I always point to Monopoly, and I'm like, look, the first time you played Monopoly, you sucked, right? Yeah, it's just, that's the way it worked. But the second time you were all about it. And what's the difference between the first time and the second time? First time you didn't know the rules. The second time you knew the rules, so you had a chance at winning. And I figure it was the same thing for business. I failed the first time because I didn't know the rules to the game. Mm-hmm. But when I was going to play again, I was going to play knowing some of these rules. That's when I went back to school. I got my degree in accounting. I went and enrolled in tax school. I started learning about Uncle Sam and who the hell was this guy and why was he taking all my money and how can I avoid paying him as legally as possible, right? Yeah. I learned all these different things, but it took that big nightmare fall to the bottom for me to figure that stuff out, right? And, if I would have just followed the directions of the people before me who had been in business before, rather than being a 21-year-old having a house party at his house every Saturday, right? There would have been a big difference. It could have been a different outcome. I don't regret any of it, but it was the path that I went on.
Well, maybe, and not to give you pushback on the other, let's just say like cast it as the corporate route, right? Where like you get a traditional education, that education is from this, place that is supposed to teach people. I think that sometimes like it can stunt your growth if your ultimate goal, or if you realize that entrepreneurialism is the career that you're going to have, right?
Yeah. If you realize that, and so I teach 17-year-olds in high school right now. I teach a course called financial algebra. So I get to teach them things like how to balance your checkbook, how to buy a car, how to buy a house, what a loan is, debt to income ratios, all that stuff, right? All that cool stuff that I know now, I get to teach them, and I talk about it every day anyway. So it's super awesome. But a lot of them, when it comes to that conversation of college, I have a completely different point of view today than I did when I was getting ready to go to college. I went to San Diego State right out of high school. My tuition was $667 a semester plus books, right? That was, I could put it on a credit card. I can go to my day job and, pay it off, and I was good.
SDSU.
Today, yes, SDSU. Today, for kids to go to college, when they get out, they have like huge mortgages attached to them. And for me, $667, I can go to college and figure it out, right? Decide what it is that I want to do. But for kids today, now all of a sudden going to college, and not knowing what you want to do, that's a very expensive mistake to be doing if you don't finish, because a lot of these kids don't finish. Now you take that and you add in COVID, where everybody's going online, right? Now you're going to pay a huge tuition to do college at home. Like it totally shifts the value of what it is. And once you know what you want to do, that's a whole different ballgame, right? That's where learning happens. I always talk about this.
It gets a little easier.
It totally gets easier. Like I think of it with like little kids, right? Like for some reason, when your kid is young, probably up until like 4th or 5th grade, they love learning. They come home, they tell you about their entire day. They tell you about, what they learned at school and, what their friends are doing, what they learned on YouTube and all kinds of stuff, right? But then around 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, something happens, right? The material gets a little more difficult. We get, as teachers, more regimented. So we're like kind of forcing things down their throat on what they're going to learn. They don't really care and like it. By the time they reach high school, there's a bunch of these kids that hate to learn. They graduate, they feel like high school's over, and then they go into their life and something clicks and they're like, oh, that's what I like. And you can't get them to stop learning again. The passion for learning comes back. And so for me, when I tell the kids, whatever you decide, I'm not saying college is the wrong thing. I'm saying really think about what it is you want to do. And you're in a good position where like go volunteer your time at whatever it is that you want. If you want to be like the next Beyonce, then go freaking volunteer at a radio station. Go learn that whole, bring people their coffee, learn how that whole system works. That way you're in the trenches and you figure out, is this really the world I want to be a part of? And if it is, now you have a leg in, right? And if it isn't, well, cool. You didn't waste your time going and getting a degree in something that you're not going to use. Yeah.
It's funny. How we ended on this subject. So we're all like same vintage. I graduated high school in 99. Ryan and I both actually went to Michigan State. So we're all state university alums here. And we feel we talk about this on the show pretty regularly because, the title of the show is conventioNOT. So we've talked with a lot of entrepreneurs that have taken that different route, not necessarily through college, not, advanced degrees and all the normal paths that we kind of think we're supposed to follow when we're growing up, as you mentioned. And it is just a mind-blowing, like looking back at, it was just the next step versus what you're describing as an opportunity. Like college is there to learn more about something. It's not to learn about yourself. That's what happens, but it's a real expensive way to learn about yourself, and yeah, man, I remember year 4, I got the invoice before I got the diploma. That's for damn sure. And it was just a mind, like I had never really sat down and thought about the numbers at all. I just had this naive perception that as long as I succeed, as long as I make it to the finish line, i.e. get that degree, everything will be fine and it'll just take care of itself. And it's like, you mentioned being able to get a loan before you could get beer. I remember going and getting those credit cards just because they came with a Bob Marley shirt. You know what I mean? Like that was the day and age, and it's a lot. It's very different now, and I love the idea that you're teaching high school students to not just look ahead for their future in terms of profession, but like that financial acumen. Like that was something I didn't get from my parents. I didn't get that. The real world taught me that, and I'm still learning. And that's a hard thing to learn in your mid to late 30s. Like it's the consequences are much, much greater. You talking about
when
losing
you're a young kid, when you come from like, let's just say like, mostly middle class, right? Because there are some differences, right? And it seems like, our swatch is probably that. But I think that ultimately trying to
Ryan, can you turn your mic up a little bit?
Oh yeah,
just a little increase.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's great.
Just better. Cool. I think that really trying to pursue that idea of freedom is why most people go to college as kids, right? And so like if you're on the upper end of that middle class, then that means that like you have some freedoms that are awarded to you because you're an adult and you can, maybe live the life, quote unquote, which is how we used to typecast college as a whole. And then there's this like other thing that, you study and you pursue what you think is going to provide you usually freedom in your life. Right. And, maybe that has something like to do with like making a bunch of money, or maybe that has to do with like, studying things in the field if you're going to be a scientist. But I think that we could probably do ourselves a lot better if we told the kids, and maybe this is an extension of what you're already doing, Hernan, is like, teaching a kid how to pursue freedom so that she could understand like what those options really are, right? Like if you want to be free in the summertime, you could be a teacher, right? And that has some different financial impacts, right? Or if you want to retire when you're early, you could be something like a firefighter, so to speak, or these types of things. And those are like super like, basic anecdotes about it. But I wish that we would, and maybe that's what ends up happening, right, bro? Like as we devalue, because it seems that we're going to be able to, or are going to devalue the operating, exit diploma, whatever that might be. That's jumbled words, but like, what you get when you're done.
I totally agree with you. Like, well, I mean, I want to take this in two directions. One is our guidance, right? Like we're raised by our parents for the most part, and no kid comes with an instruction manual, right? Every kid is different. We all have different personalities. We think differently. We act differently. We learn in different ways. But the only way we know how to parent is the way we were raised, right? And so we tend to want to give our kids some of the same experiences we had growing up for the most part. I mean, assuming you had a good childhood, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the big assumptions there. But we tend to want to do that, right? And here's the issue with that. Like I'm trying to raise my kids right now. If I was trying to raise them the way I was raised, they would be raised in a huge bubble. I mean, if I wanted to learn something as a kid, I was lucky that I had Encyclopedia Britannica in my house, right? That I could look some stuff up, and I was limited to the information that I found in those books or what I saw on TV and the news. And if I really wanted to, I could go to the library, learn the Dewey Decimal System and pull a book. But the access to information was not as easy as it is today. Right. So, my parents, like if we didn't want to talk about a subject, don't bring it up. It probably won't come up. Right. It wasn't going to be something that was going to be discussed. But with my kids, however, totally
they're going to be
different.
Exposed. Yeah.
They are nothing but a sponge of information, and they have access to the internet. So God knows what they've seen. They've seen more. They know more. They may not tell me that they know these things, but they've been exposed to a lot of this stuff. And so, and when I have this conversation with my wife, it's hard because she really wants to protect them and bubble them, and I can understand why. But at the same time, I'm trying to explain to her, our job is not to bubble these kids. Our job is to help guide them through this world that they're living in. This world is different than the world we grew up in, and my kids are, 10, 11 years old. And I was having this discussion with them the other day. I'm transitioning now. Prior to this, it was like, I'm worried about the kid falling off the bed or hitting their head, or, maybe they're allergic to something like that. Now my kids are like taking their bikes and riding outside. And, that seems like, oh, cool, the kids get to play outside. But no, as a parent, that's a whole set of other worries. Now, now I'm worried about that other car that's flying down the street, that teenager that just got their license. I'm worried about, people looking at my kids or trying to give them candy or, whatever, all kinds of other possibilities that I really have no control over. You know what I mean?
I love talking to parents, like just seeing your face as you go through the list.
You do not want to get started with Mike. So Mike, I'm not sure how much you were able to read about our backgrounds ahead of time, but Mike, reconstructs accident scenes. And so he is a litany of information that will keep your kids attached to the couch for the rest of the summer. For sure. Trampolines to everything, right?
And I'm telling you, and here's the thing, it's a scary world, but you can't keep them in the bubble. Like I know that there is a possibility that today, when my kid rides his bike outside, that a car could plow him over, and that'll be the last time I see him. Right? I pray to God that never happens, but I know that that's a possibility. Right. And I'm accepting of the fact that that's the world that we live in. This is the risks that we take. Anytime we are, from the moment we're born, we begin to die. We just don't know when that expiration date happens. And so all we could really do is help guide them. If I conceal them from the world, I feel like I'm also hindering them. I mean,
I agree.
that's all I could really do. So, on the one side, we have that guidance. It's what we were raised to do. And then on the other side of this whole education platform, it's, well, look at the education system right now. Like, I can tell you, in teaching in high school, there's a bunch of crap that you learn that you don't really need, that a good YouTube video, a couple documentaries, and you're like set. But if you could really hone in on who this individual student is, what they like to do, maybe they work with their hands, maybe they work with their mind, maybe they're programming, maybe there's some skill that just really clicks for them and it turns them on. If we can identify that for students and point them in that direction, that's a whole different world that we can live in. And it's weird. It's like the whole like Divergent type movie, like, oh, you are working in counseling and you are identified as but that's exaggerated, but that's really something that we should be looking at for our education system, because we're educating kids like they're the industrial age, and we're not an industrial age society. Like, information is easy. We get that all the time. So why are we shoving them in a classroom for 8 hours a day doing the same type of thing? It doesn't really make sense.
Well, speaking of about the way that you tend to adopt a culture with which you learned from the way that your parents use, and the point that you made about the industrial economy is very, very poignant, right? Because we don't need that same type of world anymore, right? But we're drawn to that because, like, we grew up and we knew that, like, going to school is what you did, and that fits into the, we're all entrepreneurs, so we have a little bit more like ability to smudge the schedule in a lot of ways, right? But like that all fits into that like 9 to 5 thing. Hey, it's Ryan. We talk all the time on conventioNOT podcast about why social media is something that you shouldn't be like totally involved with. Well, I'm here today to ask you to get involved with our social media at conventioNOT_podcast. We're available on any social channel you might work with. Primarily, we post everything to Instagram, but it feeds everywhere else. So take a second if you haven't already, pause your episode, jump out, subscribe to us, follow us, or like us on any of the channels. I have to wonder here, and I suppose we're not talking so much about your background, but this is so interesting, Hernan.
Yeah, I'm not gonna diverge. This is too good.
Yeah, right.
I love your podcast. It's like mine. We just take the conversation and let it go where it's gonna go.
Yeah, I'm not forcing it.
Yeah, well, we try to build credibility with our guests because, our goal is to share information, and it's real flipping hard to find validated information today, right? And so by telling the story about spending time in a high school classroom, by telling the story about, becoming bankrupt as an entrepreneur, those are the things that I think that we want to validate in these like, micro stories that we get to, tell to our listeners. But I think, where we slip up a little bit is being too confident in what that like industrial, in the last example anyway, that industrial thumbprint causes on us, right? Because it's tempting for the establishment to keep that industrial perspective rolling. Whereas, we have generations of people who literally start businesses and take on risk to monumental amounts to try to get away from that, like, I'm just labeled as 9 to 5 for sake of discussion, but that like, corporate lifestyle of hierarchy approval from somebody who was appointed to be your leader, and then ultimately the sometimes a lot of the lack of love for the business that you would be working in, right? It just becomes a paycheck that way.
Yeah, but by the same token, like, again, it's identifying the type of person that you are. There's nothing wrong with clocking in a 9 to 5. Like, there's a lot of people who, I'm oftentimes envious of people. They clock in, they clock out, and they shut it off. Right. Yep. And they get to watch Netflix and hang out and do nothing or do something or whatever it is they want to do. From the way my mind just doesn't work that way. Right. I mean, I force myself to close the laptop, and sometimes I'll be honest, like I don't I'm done with the day and I'll take my laptop downstairs and I'll quote, watch something with the wife, but she's really watching. I'm kind of typing away on my laptop at the same time right next to her. You know what I mean? It's not, grinding. It's just, but it's not, I don't really consider it grinding. My wife says I'm a freak, right? I'm weird or, not normal because that's how I operate. But I like doing that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'm actually doing the thing I like to do. I'm having fun at what I'm doing. Yes, it's work and it's tedious. And you know what? Sometimes I do need a break, and I'll I'll throw on my headphones and I'll listen to an audiobook and I'll go do some yard work or, go for a run or something like that, right? That stuff, that's a little bit of a break. But even then I'm like, she goes, well, what are you listening to? Well, I'm listening to the Pumpkin Plan.
No, yeah, I was going to
Split the Difference, or what I mean?
Yeah. I see you stopping your run halfway through so you can do an Instagram inspirational video. And guys like you and I am, one of us is not like the others. I am very good at doing nothing. I think that's why I moved to Hawaii and I belong here. You two are birds of a feather, man. And I get that and I love it because it inspires me. I said grind on purpose. I knew you were going to correct me. Ryan always refers to it as the hustle, and the reality is from the outside, it's hard to see enjoyment in that. But from the inside, it's hard to imagine anything else. You know what I mean?
Totally.
You just love it.
Each of us has their own hustle, right? I got a cousin of mine, he soups up cars. He takes imports and he turns them, drops new engines and does all kinds of, machine work and all kinds of that. He loves to do that. His hands are always freaking dirty. I mean, he's always at the junkyard, but that's his thing.
He's not bitching about it. Yep.
No. He's up till 3 a.m. doing stuff, looking for the next car he wants to work on. That's his thing. And there's a lot of people out there that's they find that thing that drives them, and there's no stopping them. They might only make $40,000 a year, but they wake up every day loving what they do, right? And that's one of those things where trying to strive for that happiness, right? That feeling of, you wake up, love what you do every single day. You're not regretting what you're doing on a daily basis. You enjoy it. I mean, that's the holy grail of whatever it is that you're looking for in life, right?
Yeah.
Amen.
I'd like to take a second to kind of key in, and maybe it pivots a little bit of our conversation away, is on that $40,000 comment, right? Is that one of the things, if you're able to figure out, and you, that $40,000 isn't the right number for you, and now more than ever you could figure this out, is the way to implement a side hustle into your world, right? And so I'd be curious, especially having such great contact with youth, and also, shout out to the Business Bros in the way that, I got a chance to listen to a few of your shows too. How do you talk about the side hustle that way, right? Because as an experienced, or, if you label yourself a serial entrepreneur, that's something that people always call me. It takes a lot to remember 20 years ago, right? You still get it foundationally, but how do you coach people today to work that way? And, maybe in that process, you give us a little bit of an idea about what the show was about and the premise of that too.
That's a perfect pivot. It's you've been podcasting for a while. That was awesome. Well, honestly, it's through podcasting. One of the biggest things when you're an entrepreneur that really sucks for most people, and they may dabble in it, whether you call them a salesperson or you call them an entrepreneur, whatever you want to call them, is the prospecting side. Prospecting sucks, right? It's not the funnest thing because you talk to a bunch of people. You have to filter through all the no's to finally find a yes. And going through those no's is not very enjoyable. And then I came across podcasting, and it allowed me to see what people mean when they say, bring value first, bring something of value first, and people will want to talk to you all day long. And, because normally before, a prospecting pitch would be something like this. Hey, it'd be excuse me, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'm going to tell you what I'm going to sell you. And hopefully at the end of this cup of coffee, you're going to buy from me and give me money, right? That's usually what the pitch in some sorts sounds like. And it's no wonder that most people are no, I'm good.
I already got a coffee.
I already got coffee. Even if it's free Starbucks, I'm just, I'm good. But when I came across podcasting, it was completely different. It was hey, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, I see you're doing something totally awesome. I think I would love to know more about what you're doing. And matter of fact, I have this show where I can promote what you're doing. Would you like to be a guest on my show? Right. And all of a sudden, 9 times out of 10, people are like, hell yeah, I would love to be on your show.
Okay.
I've been able to talk to somebody new every single day for the past 2 years and establish relationships better than I ever have in the past. And that has opened the door as a serial entrepreneur. It's like Matrix. You literally get to listen to somebody's ideas. They might be in the very beginning ideation phase of their idea. And your mind, I don't know, Ryan, maybe yours works like this. Mine does too. As soon as I hear what they're doing, I start putting Lego bricks on top of it, right? And I'm like, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this, right?
I can see the look in Ryan's eye right now.
I can't get enough of that. That's what makes me function, especially in this like, second part of my career, right? That's what makes me function, is even the smallest amount of success from somebody who's just interested to jump forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you talk about how do you get people to do, that sort of thing, I'm like, look, you're trying to make a side hustle, right? I don't care what it is. How would you like to talk to the biggest, baddest people in that industry? Right? If you want you're a skater. How would you like to talk to, Tony Hawk, right? Why don't you want to reach out to him? Wouldn't it be cool if you talk to, I don't know, skateboard brand names, but the different labels or vans or whatever, like, wouldn't it be awesome if you can talk to those people? Cool. Let's set up a show. Let's talk about the thing you love to do anyways. Let's invite people and ask them if they know anybody else who might be interested in your show. And it's like, dude, 6 degrees of separation. You notice real quick, as soon as you have somebody on your show and you ask them who else do you think would be a good guest to be on my show, everybody tags up. They want somebody that they look up to have the same good experience that you had. And you're just like, all of a sudden, you're like interviewing big names you never thought you would connect with. Now you can text them, you can send them an email. You've established that relationship. And what you do with that after, that's up to you.
I got goosebumps. Because right when you said, I've been having conversations with people for 2 years, I'm like, this dude was either the most popular guy in college and then you went on to explain basically the Rolodex, it's an exponential growth, right? Like it just is a little slow at first, but if you don't mind though, what are some other, like, literally, that's a lot of guests. How did you line that up? Like what's the process?
300 guests that I've interviewed on the show. Over 300 guests. We just crossed the 500 threshold. Literally today, we're going to be recording episode 501. Right?
Amazing. Dude.
So
amazing.
And the only reason why we don't have 500 episodes, because like today, I had somebody on the schedule. They call me up. They're like, hey, I can't make it. Can I reschedule to another day? Cool. That's fine. That happens. Right. So we do put on a show every day. Doesn't necessarily mean that every day I have an interview, but we try to go 5 for 5 every week. Right. Sometimes it's 4 for 5. Sometimes it's 3 for 5. But for the most part, we go 5 for 5 every single week. And the first 100 episodes that we did were audio only. We didn't even have video. And it wasn't until about episode like 60 or so, and my 8-year-old goes, Dad, if you want people to listen to your show, you got to have influencers on your show. And I was like, oh, genius. He was 8 at the time, right? He was 8,
yeah,
right? And I understood it as, oh, you need to interview people. That's how you're going to grow your audience. And when they come on the show, they're going to share it with their friends and family. And that's how your audience is going to grow. And I was like, that's pretty damn smart. So we started to reach out to people. And that's all I did at the beginning. Was at the end of the show, while it was still recording, I would say, hey, who do you think would be a good guest to have on the show? And, under pressure, they'd tag somebody. And of course, we'd tag them on Facebook. And now, like, you got called out, dude. It was like the ice bucket challenge.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
Next. Right? You're next. You're hopping on the show. But that's how it initially started. And real quick, we got into, local influencers and people who own companies and CEOs of local places. They don't care how many people are listening to your show. The fact is, more people hear about their product or service, right? You're giving them a platform to do that. We started to, add the video component. We added the live stream component. Now we chop up our long form segment into small pieces. We put it on social media. We tag them. We're just constantly in that giving mindset. The more that we give to people, the more that we bring value to them, then it comes back, right?
Free promotion for them.
Now it's like, now you guys have 500 episodes. Now when they think, hey, somebody's talking about, hey, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. Who should you call? Boom, they hit us up right away. And that's how this whole thing started with, turning the podcast into a business. Now I do a training, and it's about 40 minutes, and I teach you how to create an audio podcast, how to distribute it, how to get free hosting, how to start to monetize your show, do all those things for free, add the video live stream for free, add how to get guests on your show and how to be a guest on other shows for free, right? I mean, just the platforms that I'm already using. And then what I sell them is the branding aspect. Now, you look at my show compared to other people's shows, right? Like Marshall is fully branded. We have video segments. We can add in video intros, outros. And the reason why I show them to do it that way is because I want to save you time and money. You have one production that you put all the way through. At the end, you're done. You hit the end button and you have the video, you have the audio. It's already edited. You have intros, outros, segments, done. Like, and then I show you, the reason why we do segments in our shows, because in post edit, I don't want to spend a lot of time listening to the entire show again. I go to the segment piece, I cut it. I go to the next segment piece, I cut it, and there's the clip. Like, I try to save you enough time and money, because that's what every entrepreneur needs, right? We need more time in our day. We need more money in our pocket. And if I can save you on your marketing expense, plus you get to talk about what you love to do every single day, that's a win, right? It's prospecting and marketing at the same time.
I don't think it's appreciated, like the time and effort that goes into the behind the scenes work on these, right? There's, and I get once in a while, people will be like, oh my God, you guys are doing a podcast? Like, that's amazing. And I'm always like, any asshole can do a podcast. Like, sorry, excuse my language, but it's like, you don't even need a mic. Like, to publish it doesn't cost anything. Now, with that said, clearly that means that the world is full of horrendous podcasts and amazing ones, and the range is so great. We noticed over the past few months the range or the numbers of podcasts have definitely gone up. I think there's a lot of people sitting around with not much else to do. But you mentioned like the editing and the, to put those little clips together and all that sort of stuff. The world sees 30 seconds, but the effort that went into that is sometimes these little passions of ours can be consuming, and I know the more our podcast kind of takes off, the more time it's consuming. So at some point you have to like shift from it just being the side hobby to like, no, if I'm doing this, I need to do it the way I do almost everything else. And I need to do it efficiently. And, to be honest, we are very much not there yet. It's just ramping up. Ryan, what did we've passed our 5,000 download mark. We've got about 35 episodes in now. And I think we're just reaching that next plateau of like, we need to get better at the behind the scenes stuff. We need to get more efficient at it, not better at it, but just more efficient so it doesn't consume as much time and we can produce more of it. Like, that's the part that I can't wrap my head around, is how you keep up with this on a daily basis, and I see your posts are regular, like it's a lot of work. So you've gotten real good at it.
I try to get as efficient as possible. But you brought up something that's really important, and you brought up the metrics, right? You get 35 episodes, so many thousands of downloads. That's awesome. That's great. But, statistically, I saw an article, and this was like right before COVID. So I don't know what the numbers are exactly today, but right before COVID, there was 1 million podcasts, and half of those podcasts had 14 episodes or less, right? Okay. That means that we don't really have a saturated field compared to like YouTube channels. We're at like 31 million. Blogs were like at, 500 million blogs. So, there's still a lot of room for growth in this space. But there's two reasons why they don't continue. Number one is it does take work to put this stuff together. So when there's work involved, they don't tend to go past that 14 episode marker. It's just too much work. But the other side of it is you would be able to put in the work, but you realize that for the first 14 episodes or whatever, you're not getting very many downloads. Nobody's listening to you, right? And so those two things combined, most people aren't going to continue that going forward. But when I talk to people about podcasting, I'm like, look, you can have that ambition to be the next Joe Rogan, and that's cool. If that's what you want to go for it. But I'm going to tell you at the very beginning, you're going to suck because you're not even worried about, you're trying to hold a conversation with somebody, but at the same time, you're trying to make sure the mic is on and the headphones are on, and is it recording, and am I live streaming? Like, all these other things are popping in your head that your ability to even hold a conversation isn't that great, much less interview somebody, right? That's a whole different ballgame. So you're going to suck at the beginning, but as you master one thing at a time, that becomes second nature, and you can focus your attention on the next thing and the next thing. So it's actually a good thing that nobody's listening to you at the beginning, right?
No, that's true.
By the time they do start listening, you kind of got it down pat. You've gotten a little bit better at it. You're worth listening at that point. Listen to any podcast. Go to episode 1 compared to the one where they're at right now. Dude, night and day. It's you know,
right? I mean, you
yeah.
expect it to be. We've had conversations, Ryan and I, where we're like, should we delete those old ones? Just between like the sound quality and, just so many things. And that's, you hope there's a progression, right? But I know what you mean. Like, I've seen quite a few where it's like 3 episodes. You're like, they haven't put out an episode since 2018. Like, I think this one's been put to bed,
Yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles, right? I mean, that's just what happens. So if I can help streamline a process, right? If I can show you, look, this is how I do things now. This is how I'm able to put so many episodes, per week out there. And I show you what I'm doing and you see how easy it is for me to do it on a daily basis. Then when you do it once a week, it's that much easier. I've coached some people, that used to pay, $800 a month to go to a studio and record 2 audio episodes every month. And it was audio only. And because they were afraid, they didn't know the technology and all that stuff. And to now they're doing a show every day. They actually have 2 podcasts that they do, one with another co-host, one by themselves. Right. And like, it's just gaining that confidence and learning how to ride this bike and then go then hop on that thing and fly wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
I know. A lot to
usually
sink in, right?
No, I'm like, it's that my brain is shooting in different directions right now, and I don't want to segue back to where we've already visited. Oh,
that's all right. That's part of the hosting thing, right? That's one of those like, damn, there was this question I wanted to ask, and it finally came back to me at this point, so now I want to ask it.
Well, it definitely makes you a better communicator, right? We talk about this, and Mike, we use this app called Marco Polo. Marco Polo has become pretty famous during COVID and its value. But we talk a lot about in the accountability sessions. We started this because we figured out that over our careers, we have always held each other like really personally accountable. And then we started to realize that our other, small group of college friends always did the same thing. And then we thought, well, shit, if that is the case, then what about these other people who seem very happy in life? Because that was something that Mike and I started to recognize about ourselves, is that we're starting to arrive to this part of happiness. And, we both have our different recipes for that match our own DNA. But what I think can happen a lot of times when we're talking about like upstarting something like this and really being able to technically do it is that you can easily start to overshoot the content. And, that ultimately is what you have to figure out how to be able to share there. Maybe even before you figure out how to attract listeners, you have to figure out how to like build content yourself. Mm-hmm. So was there a latency period for you in building content? Or, I mean, you talked about going from like chits to door hangers in such a early time of your life, right? Like that's a great example of like a micro improvement that dynamically affects success.
So I told you when I tell people now that they can be the next Joe Rogan, that not to shoot for that. But when I started, that was the first person I looked to, right? I was like, who's doing it really good? Oh, look, Joe Rogan's kicking ass. Okay, well, he's at the time he was like at 1,000 episodes, right? Or 1,100, something like that. I was like, okay, cool. So all I got to do is get to 1,000 and then I'll be as awesome as Joe Rogan, right? So my thought process was, how fast can I get there? And I'm one of those perfect is the enemy of done. I'm just going to get this thing done. I'm going to record these. I'm going to start to post them out. I'm going to record them, start to post them out. And we'll see what happens as I go. When we first started, James and I, and we started in July. So July 13th is going to be 2 years officially. We would meet on Sundays and we would sit down and we'd write out, what are the 5 topics we're going to talk about today or this week, right? And so we'd map it out. We'd pick 5 topics and then draw a little outline. So we'd have a conversational outline to go off of. And then, go sit down and record and we'd go and handle that stuff. Right. As we got better and better at, talking behind the mic and getting more comfortable. I mean, we had episodes where, my kids were like, Dad, you say "okay" after every sentence. And I was like, no, I didn't. I started listening to myself. I was like, dude, that's horrible. We grabbed this glass jar, we grabbed quarters. And while we're recording, you would hear us literally go, oh, I heard it cling and drop like really loud quarters into this glass jar on the show to correct each other. When I heard him say some filler at the end of a sentence, I'd drop a quarter. When he heard me, he'd drop a quarter and we'd catch each other. And, there's episodes in there where we're we're literally getting better at our craft while we're on the air, perfecting as we go. There's no such thing as perfect. We're just going to get through this. We don't edit any of our stuff. We would add intros and outros, but we didn't edit in our anything. It's raw. And when it comes to the amount of content, my wife is like, are you even going to be like a number one podcast? I'm like, I don't even need to be number one. Most people listen to 7 shows on their, they subscribe to, right? 7 shows. So I'm like, if I can make it in people's top 10, maybe I'm number 9 or 10 in their list, right? But here's the difference. Those other shows that they listen to all the time, they probably record once a week. So they get caught up with those. And then they go down the line. You're never going to get caught up with my shows.
Yeah, right? You're giving them content all the time.
So I see myself as the Judge Judy of podcast, right? So Judge Judy is on TV all freaking day long, right? Because there's no shortage of court cases that come up, right?
Streaming. You're right.
But everybody knows who Judge Judy is, right? Everybody knows that you can find it on TV. There's clips, her personality, and that's how I see myself as building a brand. You're not going to always listen to my entire content, from start to finish. You're going to see my stuff on social media all the time. And when it comes down to it, you're going to recognize my brand. And anytime I show up to an event, like if I go to, well, they haven't been around lately, but I would go to like a street fair or something, and I'm wearing my shirt, like people are like, hey, I know that, or that's cool shirt.
Really?
Like they start to recognize it. Sure. Because I'm the Judge Judy of podcast, right? My wife hates that, but that's the truth. I have so much content that I'm putting out there. I'm not worried about it being super perfect. I'm showing up in your face all the time. That's how you build a brand.
Mm-hmm. Did you say the phrase "perfect is the enemy of done"?
Yep, that's a Ryan Holiday quote.
I've never heard that before, but I really, really, really like it.
Yeah,
as an engineer, I don't know if I should get super comfortable with it, but
I expect you to be perfect as an engineer.
That's the problem, right? When I'm like, nothing's 100%. And they're like, what do you mean nothing's 100%? I'm like,
you just built that bridge.
Forget it.
Like, I'm 100% sure that nothing's 100%.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love that. And I love that mantra, Hernan, because it's realistic, entering into not just a new endeavor, but something that you want to continue with. Like, I know I'm oversimplifying it, but just give yourself a little bit of a break. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine to look at who's doing it the best, but I feel like the 20-year-old version of me would not have lasted past a couple episodes, because A, there wasn't that immediate gratification, and B, we sucked at it. It was enjoyable. It's always been enjoyable, but the truth is like, I like talking to my buddy Ryan. I can just pick up the phone, So for us, and I think we just have that natural, you want to improve, you want to progress with the quality of whatever you're putting out there.
We are conventioNOT Podcast. If you're listening to us for the first time, if you'd like to check out some other episodes with dynamic careers of people who follow their passion, it's certainly worth scrolling down the episodes.
I really love like your mantra of it's out there. It's out there. If you want it, come and get it, because there's a ton of it. I am the Walmart. It may not be all the highest quality, but you can wander around in here for hours and hours and hours.
Mm-hmm. And that's it, right? And it's super funny. Once you have established a brand, right? Once people know that you're consistent, like if there's one thing, and I would ask people, I even asked, I asked the wife, I go, what do you think people think of me when they see me? Like, what's the description of me, right? I mean, Ryan, you said serial entrepreneur, and the coolest description that I've gotten was that guy's well connected. Like that guy knows people. Right. And it's true. Like it wasn't true before, but it's true now. And anytime somebody needs something, they start with me. I'm like their local Google for, let me help you find something, right? Or Angie's List or whatever you want to call it. Like, who do you know that can help me with XYZ? And that is powerful in and of itself, because now the people I've connected with not only connect with me because, they got to be on my podcast and I promoted their stuff. Now I'm literally sending them referrals. Right. Mm-hmm. And when you send somebody
value.
When you send somebody a referral, they're going to feel like they got to give you a referral back. I mean, case in point, if you're in an office and somebody comes up to you on Christmas and says, hey, I got you a Christmas present, and you look up at them, you almost want to hit them because you didn't get them anything, and you feel like an asshole because you didn't get them anything, right?
Immediate guilt. I mean, Hernan, are you saying, is this within the past 3 years? You went from, kind of maybe not being the most connected guy to like, is that just solely due to the podcast?
Solely due to the podcast. And that's, when I tell people one of the reasons why you want to start a podcast is because you may be an expert in something. Problem is nobody knows you're an expert in something. Right? And that's even one of the, that's the problem, right? There's a lot of people, and you can point at almost any self-employed person, any general contractor, and you ask them, are you good at that? They're like, dude, I'm the best at this. Really? Because nobody else knows that. You might be the best, but if nobody knows that you exist, then you're not doing enough business. And so, again, it comes down to how many people are you talking to about what it is you do on a regular basis? And if honestly, if you can just talk to one person a day, you talk to any business coach, how many people did you how many contacts did you make today? How many touches did you make today? How many follow-ups did you have today? Like, those are the same common questions. Well, just use a different method. Instead of picking up the phone and trying to sell them something, pick up the phone and say, hey, let me show you, I got a referral for you. I want to promote your stuff. It's just the same approach, just a little bit different. And yeah, July 13th will be 2 years. So prior to the podcast, I had a lot of experience in business and finance and taxes, 15 years of business, all that stuff. Nobody knew about it. I was going to say, like, clearly it wasn't as though you had not found success in other arenas, but I feel like this is where you belong, and just having this like outreach and being kind of not a focal point, but being that guy that's so well connected. It just seems like what you desire maybe more than being the top real estate guy or the best team. Like, you're right in your wheelhouse. You know what I mean? But you still get to do all that other stuff. Like, it really is just, for some people, what we're describing is just pure anxiety, right? Like, oh my God, so many things going on. But you got people at the other end of the spectrum that are just like, man, would I be bored if I didn't have 5 jobs to think about on a daily basis? I gotta ask. Sorry, go ahead, Hernan. Yeah, well, I mean, you were talking about, being well connected. Is that something I wanted? Growing up, I was a pretty good ball player. Like, I thought Major League Baseball was going to be my path, right? That's the direction I thought I was going to go in. When that didn't happen, that desire to be recognized never went away. I put it away because it sounds weird if you're not going to, be famous that way. Like, you still want to be famous? Okay, dude, how are you going to be a famous tax preparer? That's not going to work, right?
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So you kind of put it away because you're kind of ashamed, but it never left me. I always wanted that recognition. I always loved that kind of spotlight. Standing on the mound and everybody's watching you, you're in control of the game. Like, that's awesome, right? That always felt amazing. You're right. This podcasting space, 15 years of learning how to speak insurance, learning how to speak taxes, got my degree in accounting, all these different, seminars and trainings that I went to, real estate investing, flipping houses. Like, it just gave me that vocabulary so that when anybody comes to my podcast and sits down, like, we can take the conversation in any direction. We can get as technical as you want, or we can get, go into, like, I had one conversation go into like granny porn. It was weird, but I can go in any direction you want to go in, and I'm 100% comfortable with it, right? Because I can speak that language, and that's where the preparation and those 15 years, it was worth it. But now you're right. This is my vehicle. Now I'm going to show people, look, you can go from zero to hero with a little bit of work and effort, and let me show you the greatest secret to an entrepreneur, and it's how you prospect. This is my prospecting tool.
It's interesting because we started the show talking about the value of very traditional education. I need to throw a quarter in a glass every time I say, it's my northerner in there. But as we come into understanding not only what your business does, but where you're really starting to deliver this fire in your life and this excitement in your life, and even so much that you're trying to explain it to everybody, right? You explain to your wife, it's a big part of it, right? And I think a lot of podcasters identify with that because it's not a pay for thing for probably 98% of that 1 million. You're not getting paid for it, but when you look toward moving forward from, the business aspect of the podcast, is that something that you see using to grow different brands? I mean, because you're talking about education on a very, very practical level in these. I think most of your shows are less than an hour from what I learned.
Yeah.
So do you approach it that way? Like, because you're literally teaching people. We talked about this like shitty impression that we had with education. That comes up a lot. Our most recent guest didn't even graduate from high school. He sold a bunch of companies, right? 2 guests actually not graduate from high school. And I wonder how you take that. Like, how do you think if podcasting isn't going to be the career, and maybe that's what you're going to talk about, but like, how do you brand that out? How do you start to think about the next step, being that kind of an entrepreneur in your heart?
So you've heard that saying, your network is your net worth, right? I'm sure it's pretty popular saying in the entrepreneurial space. Well, in over time, we have history, right? History is literally his story, right? So it's that's how we pass it down. It's what we teach each other, right? And we're in this position like where we started at the beginning, where we're pushing this whole education thing, but really, we learn from those that share their stories, their experiences. We're just pushing the education system on some author that wrote something that we should learn, rather than just experiencing, conversating with people on a regular basis. That is really truly where the power is. So, for me, this whole podcast space, this is how I'm going to connect with people, because I feel like, that first 2008 economic bust, I was just learning things. I wasn't in a position to ride that wave. We're about to hit the next one, and I'm already on the surfboard paddling, because I know I'm riding this wave like no other, right? And podcasting is going to be my space right now. I mean, this weekend, on Friday, I am not doing a podcast. And then we got Saturday and Sunday, 4th of July, right? We closed it off because my brother and I, every 4th of July, we do the MCU universe. We watch every single Marvel movie, all 24 movies. He has a schedule laid out this year. We're watching them in chronological order rather than like release date, right? So, so we're doing that. But while we're doing that, we're also going to map out the Insurance Bro Show. And this one's going to be different than the Business Bros. Business Bros started because we should start a podcast. Okay, let's start it. But now everything we've learned, we're really focusing our attention on this one because we're going to monetize this completely different. So we own an insurance agency. Our insurance agency, basically what we do is we take on somebody who's either just got their license, or maybe they have a tax office or a mortgage office, and we're going to add insurance into their business. We get them licensed, and we train them on how to work with our insurance carriers and support them to write business. We have a full, support system for them. So we're actively looking for insurance agents. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a podcast where we're going to talk directly to insurance agents and figure out what sucks for them and what's really working for them. And then we're going to share with them what we're doing. And hopefully we get some to come our way. And some of them may stay with their current companies, like the State Farms and the Allstates. They're exclusive, but they're going to come across risks that they can't write. And so they got to send them somewhere. Hopefully they send them our way. Right. So that's objective number one. Objective number two is we're going to talk to all our insurance carriers. Like we have like 300 insurance carriers that we work with. And we're going to be like, when you go after an insurance agent, who's the ideal person you want to go after? And if we can identify that, we're going to say, cool, we're going to go after those people. By the way, insurance company who has tons of money for marketing, because we see your commercials all the time. How would you like to be a sponsor our podcast where we're targeting this particular type of individual? Oh, just so happens to be the kind of client you're after? I know, that's kind of strange. That's funny how that works, right? But now that we have the skill to do that, and we can easily come down, and we have the credibility with our first podcast, we can run this spinoff. I've had this other idea in my head. I'm like, I want to do this one if I can find time to do this one. So I have my real estate license, right? And when I started the Business Bros, I had initially started it because I thought if I can get real estate leads and turn some more deals, that'd be awesome. It's an extra income I can have on the side. But I started interviewing realtors, so that didn't quite work out, right? But that thought has never left my head. So I was like, man, what if I do a show where all I do is interview homeowners and I highlight, their experience with realtors, and then I can highlight the realtors also, right? And now by association, everybody who sees that show has seen me helping people promote their homes. and I'm dealing with nothing but homeowners. And then the next time they think of somebody who they want to have a real estate experience with, they're going to be like, go with this guy. He's going to do a whole show for you. And that's a whole different ball game to get into the real estate market. Now and I have no shortage of people who want to be on the show because how many homeowners are out there? There's
Exactly.
tons,
Exactly.
right? So, I'm hitting my target audience with an agenda. I'm highlighting the agents that are on the show, the ones that are really good, right? Because I'm not going to sit there and do all the representation myself. The ones that are really good, I'm going to be like, and I'll promote it every time. Hey, make sure, if you guys have any questions for real estate, always hit me up. I got a great team that wants to work with you, right? Yeah. And now people know when they come to me, they get to they see the experience of all the real estate stuff that's happening. They see all the experience of the homeowners that they're going through, and they're going to want that same experience. And I get to handpick which agents I want to work with. So, that's the other side of building a podcast with an intention in mind, right? When you're doing it with business mindset going into it. And that's cool. And it's just a matter of talking to more people. Right. So, and I'm going to learn stuff from homeowners that I never would have learned. I'm sure they all have careers in a bunch of different fields that I'll get to learn about. And, I get smarter every single day because I meet someone new who teaches me something I didn't know. Right. And that to me is education. That's learning. Right. You get to take in all these pieces from, we do it anyways with books. Right. I told you I read a bunch of books. I don't know all of them word for word, but I take a piece here and I take a piece here. I take a piece here and it becomes me. Right. That's who I am.
That's what I love about these conversations is I do. It's the exact same thing. I'll spend the rest of this evening, parceling this out to my wife. And, she's always like, don't spoil it. I want to wait till it comes out. You mentioned something, it came up a couple times and I have to ask the question, you are obviously very willing to, hold hands, and lift up your guests or your students or whoever it may be. But I do have to ask, in this sphere of podcasting and introducing people to promoting their projects or their product or whatever it may be, not everyone is as comfortable as the three of us are talking to begin with, B, being recorded, C, being a visual. So do you have a couple off the top of your head stories where you were the person said they were ready to go and you get them on the mic and it's just all right, cut, time out. Are you okay? Are you having a nervous breakdown? Have you had any that were just oh shit, this person's about to have a heart attack? What are some of your experiences?
Oh my gosh.
With that?
So, I'll give you two. So one was kind of quick. The guy was he was chatty. He was telling us all kinds of stories. He was, he was pumped. He was ready to go. And we were like, all right, cool. We're going to get ready to hit the start button here. We hit the start button and I asked him a question and all I get was yes.
Oh, really?
It was amazing.
Just total night and day.
Answer,
he totally turned it off.
As soon as you hit the switch, I don't know, something inside him changed and he it was stage fright. You couldn't continue the conversation. Yeah. So, what ends up happening is I tell stories at that point.
Yeah.
Right? I'm
just filling in the blank. Yeah. Right?
I'm filling in the blanks. I'm like, dude, so, tell me, I'll ask him something what was one of those worst experiences? I had a bad client. And I'm like, oh yeah. I remember I had a bad client and and I tell a whole story and about 10, 15 minutes in after doing stuff like that, they tend to, warm up and they get into space. They forget the cameras are there. They forget the mics there and they get into it. But, getting started, it was, in a post-COVID world, I haven't experienced that as much because we're all used to this.
Everyone's getting better at it fast. Yeah.
Right. But prior to that, I'd bump into those every once in a while. And then I had one of the first people that I interviewed. He told me, he went from, got out of jail and built his whole company up, to where it is today. And he had a whole story about how his previous partner had, basically when he went to jail and he was running the company from jail, his other partner was like, nah, I don't want to do business with you. Cut him out and took everything from him. So he had to start over when he got out and now his company's really big. So anyways, so that whole situation happens. So then I'm interviewing this guy, and I never knew the guy's name. Starts off the program and the first thing he comes up with is, so the story that you told, blah, 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 like he's the other guy, right? And he starts coming off on me, and I was like, whoa. And this is one of those times where like my face turned red. Like I didn't know like what to say.
And you're live at this
and I was
point?
live, and I was like, and as soon as at first I was like, that's a pretty interesting story. And then once it clicked, like you can see it in my face, like, oh my gosh, this is the guy.
No, the world is that small.
The world is that small. So basically, I cordially kind of like ended the show early. We do about a 30-minute show. It was like a 10-minute show, 12-minute show, something like that. And then I told him, I go, hey man, like this guy's really helping me out. It was early on. So he was like connecting with me with a bunch of people high up in the industry. I was like, look, he's really helping me out, and I can't really do that to him. I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were at the beginning, blah blah. He's like, I completely understand. I just wanted to make sure I got my story told. So like, dude, there's stuff that
so that was his whole motivation, was just like, I need to tell the other side of this story.
Yes. And so, those are the two like major dramas that I've ever.
I kind of give that dude credit. He made it all the way back. He got on your show.
Yep.
I'm gonna get that son of a bitch back.
But the thing was, he was nameless, right? Like the other guy told his story. He talked about the partner, but he never mentioned the partner's name or the partner's company, nothing like that, right? So when that guy came on, I was like, and once it clicked, like I started to put the pieces together, I was like, oh crap. I had to call the other guy. I'm like, he's like, I was watching. I was like, I didn't know who he was. You never told me who he was.
You got in the middle of the vendetta real quick.
Yeah.
Like totally not your fault, but like, yeah, man, I got played. I didn't mean to be a part of this,
Right.
Like I didn't want to be in the middle of it.
I was young in the whole interview space. If that would have happened to me today, I'd have kept going. I'd have been like, tell me about it. I go, this is the stuff that you want to get. This is the emotions. This is the stuff that's really juicy. This is the stuff that gets you, really listened to, and people like that sort of stuff. I mean, dude, Housewives of Atlanta is the whole reason why my wife watches that show, is because they freaking yell at each other and all kinds of drama, right?
There's drama.
Right? And so, not that I wanted my show to be 100% drama, but drama every once in a while ain't that bad.
No. And that is good stuff. It was just a matter of you for a moment feeling on your heels, right? Because at the end of the day, like, shit, man, you're just the platform. You didn't guide that story, but I'm not accustomed to that feeling in conversation, much less on the podcast either. So if that did occur on here, it would be, I would stumble. I would definitely stumble a bit.
Yeah.
And that's what
I did.
Not being live. I mean, I can just imagine how tough that'd be. That'd be pretty awkward.
Oh, dude. Good times though. I mean, I definitely want to do it again.
The reason why I brought that up is because, I've had a few people that, it was like, hey, do you want to come on the show? And they're just like, no, hell no. And I'm just like, all right, like, is there a way we can improve the show? They're like, oh, no, it's nothing about your show. I just, like, I don't want to be recorded. I don't want to look at, and people be able to see me while I'm talking. And it's like, okay, but you're getting married in 6 months, so you might want to get a little more comfortable with people looking at you and you needing to say something. Like, so there's this moment in your future that we can help you with, So I'm always like, I get it, but come on, I'll hold your hand. Like, it's just me, man. We've talked before, and like, we're going to film this one and record it, but don't worry about that.
Yeah. It's funny because that whole, I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I sound. Like, I got that a lot early on, like, I'm not good behind the camera. Yeah. My voice doesn't sound that great. I'm like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but that face of yours, you've had it for a long time. Like, that's the way you look. Right. And that voice of yours, that's the way you sound. Like, that's just the way it is. So,
and guess what? The rest of us are used to it. You're the only one still struggling with how you look and sound. The rest of us, we've grown accustomed to it.
And it wasn't even like you've gotten accustomed to it. Like, you're only thinking about it because I put a mic in front of you and headphones, and you can actually hear yourself a little bit better. Because other than that, not a big deal.
No, that's amazing. Right. So we have this question that we kind of regularly ask, and I'm dying to hear your answer. Going back to like 16-year-old Hernan, what do you think What do you think 16-year-old Hernan would think about what you're doing right now and where you're at in life? And B, if you could kind of shoot that version any advice from, so bounce back and forth between now and then and have that conversation with us.
16-year-old me, I don't think was comfortable being in the spotlight. Like, I don't think I was 100%. Like, I like being on the mound, and I loved the attention when I was on the field because I could do that really well. But other than that, in high school, I didn't really have like one set core group of friends that I hung around with. I kind of I bounced around from everywhere to everywhere, and I was never really connected. And in hindsight, that's kind of like how I am today. My network is vast. I know a lot of people, but I don't have very many people that I'm connected with that I, pick up the phone and talk to on a regular basis. That's never been me. And I saw it as a weakness before, where now I see it as a strength. Right. And so, if I was going to go back and give myself advice, it'd be find a way to help them more, highlight them more. Right. Sure. If I could have been that guy, if I could have been the guy that threw the party in high school, right? The one that brought, people together, that showed them a good time, it'd have been a whole different ballgame. And, in 2008, I actually started a YouTube channel. You can find like me with hair with 3 episodes talking about budgeting and stuff. And I think back to that, if I would have stuck to it then, right, where would it be today? Right. If only 2 years from, it's been 2 years since we're doing the podcast, and it's already dramatically changed my life, the way I see things and my business in general. What would it have been like if I did it in 2008? And so for anybody else, don't wait, like start now and understand that everybody starts at 0 and we go from there. But the longer you wait, 0 just sticks with you until you finally decide to start. So get moving.
Yeah, there's an inherent risk in waiting until, like the perspective of waiting until, right? And I know that a lot of people tear themselves up about being procrastinators, and that's a big part of like personality traits, but like that risk of waiting until is something that it's unfortunate because it costs more when you realize that you did it wrong than it should. And like, that's pretty universal between humans. I feel pretty sad that we're getting towards the end of our time here. I really have enjoyed this episode. I think, we're about an hour in, and we don't publish live, but we try to go with 0 edits or as close to 0 edits as we can. So, and I know you got another commitment yourself. If you could you give us a little bit of a rundown how I find you, if I'm interested in, some services, just, the big picture of how you're working there.
Totally. If you want to just be part of our network, go to businessbros.biz, or you can find us on social media at businessbrospod. But I'm also doing a training on Mondays. So I'm going to teach you how to take your podcast from 0 to hero. It's about 40 minutes long. Go to businessbros.biz/setup. Set up, just one word, SETUP, and register, and we'll see you there, and get ready to podcast like a pro.
Oh, cool. If you have an audio clip about that, like a 20 or 30 second, I'll pull this part out of the edit, but like we'd be happy to drop that into our promo for whatever little traffic that we could. We cut a couple commercials into the episode. So really appreciate that, Hernan. To find us, you find us at conventioNOT Podcast, just on all the social media channels. And we don't yet publish one a day. I think if we could get one a week, Mikey, we'd be happy. But I'm real curious about the training. I don't know if Monday fits in just yet, but that might be something, that could work for us too. Because it's hard to find time to educate yourself as an adult. And so you have to be like really confident that it's going to work, right? And if you've done anything today, I think you validated that for our listeners. And, I guess I started to think too that, probably a lot of your listeners don't get a chance to hear what your background is in such a succinct way, right? Like if I listen to your show, I hear a bit about you and I get to know you, but hopefully there's a little bit of like, cross collaboration here that could work to cross promote. Really enjoyed having you aboard today.
I love having just straight out conversations with people. So you guys are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Like it's gonna be worth it. You might not know exactly how you're gonna run things and where it's gonna go, but if you keep at it and you work, just chisel away at what you're building here. It's a boulder, but you're gonna create a sculpture out of it. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Advice.
Done is the enemy of perfection. Is the enemy of done. That's right. My takeaway. I love it, Hernan. Everything you shared with us today was like. It was beautifully sincere. It was educational. I'm getting a little, I'm getting all kinds of goodness from this interview. So I know that we will speak again. It's just a matter of
if we record an episode 2.
That's what I'm saying. Like on what platform is the question.